What is going on to all my movie fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. In today's review, we will be discussing the last chapter and the last adventure of one of the most iconic characters in cinema history. We're talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, questions I will be answering in today's video will be, was this a good send-off to such an iconic character? Was James Mangold the right director to helm this film? And more importantly, is this movie worth checking out in theaters? We'll be discussing that and much more in today's spoiler-free review. But first, let's have a conversation in the comments. Let me know if you are a fan of the franchise and if you were excited for this new and final chapter. And once you all have seen the Dial of Destiny, let's talk about it. What were your pros, your cons? What worked? What didn't work? And if you have seen all 5 Indiana Jones films, how would you rank them from worst to best? Let's talk about all of that in the comments below. So quick story before we get into my review. Growing up as a kid, I wouldn't label myself as like a big Indiana Jones fan. Like, I appreciate them growing up, but I didn't really love those movies. So leading up to seeing this screener the week prior to it, I said, you know what, let me go ahead and watch the 4 previous ones before seeing this new one. And I'm happy to report now, after seeing all 4 of them, I love me some Indiana Jones, man. I love the franchise. Now, I will be honest, I prefer some over others, and I will be making a rankings video in the coming days, but I love the character, love Steven's direction, love the score and the adventure and just all the stuff that the franchise has to offer. And with that, I was geeked. I was excited for my screener. I have seen the film. We're talking about it. And I want to start off by talking about, for the first time ever of this franchise, there is no Steven Spielberg directing this film. There is no George Lucas having his hands in the script. You know, they are executive producers, but they didn't create this movie. So let's talk about the new writers and talk about the director in particular, and that is James Mangold, who, for me personally, fantastic director. Copland, 3:10 to Yuma, Walk the Line, The Wolverine, Ford v Ferrari is such an excellent movie. But my personal favorite is Logan. So to answer that question, was James Mangold a good replacement for who I consider to be the greatest director of all time in Steven Spielberg? And the answer to that is yes. I think James Mangold did such a great job of, number one, giving us a similar tone, giving us a similar vibes of what I love about the franchise, and more importantly, addressing the elephant in the room. Indiana Jones, and particularly the actor that plays him, Harrison Ford, is no young buck, and they address that in the actual narrative, and the way James Mangold handles that narrative was just almost perfect in my eyes. Now, I don't want to use the word perfect too often, but what I loved about the idea of focusing on the adventurer, focusing on this iconic character, was, what does he look like in 1969 with the space race, his younger days past him, the adventures are no longer there, some of his close family and friends are no longer there. What does that Indiana Jones look like? Now, don't get me wrong, there is still adventure, there are still fun elements in this movie, but this, to me, I would say, if not the best, maybe one of the best character-driven films within this particular franchise, and showing us what is it about history with Indiana Jones. Why is he so obsessed with history? Why does he love being enamored by the past times? We explore that. We also explore the pain, the vulnerability, the mistakes that he has gone through since the very beginning. So I love that they focus on addressing his age. It is, you know, going back to my love of Logan, obviously Wolverine and Indiana Jones are completely different characters, but the idea of what Logan did, showing us an old man Logan, showing us the pain, the suffering, the trauma, the mistakes Logan has endured, and looking at that in the lens of Indiana Jones, I really love that. And the emphasis on the word history. We get the history and more exploring of this character. I love that element so much. And I thought that James Mangold did such a great job of focusing on that key element while also giving us a fun adventure, which we'll be discussing in a little bit. But pivoting over to a little bit of the story and what it reminded me of, again, going back and revisiting the original films, this movie in particular, not beat by beat, but has similar characteristics to Temple of Doom meets The Last Crusade. Now, when I bring up those two films, I'm referring to elements in this movie, The Dial of Destiny. Like, the Temple of Doom comparison comes to Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She almost has like a short round character sidekick that goes around with her in this film, but also tonally speaking, now the Dial of Destiny isn't as dark as Temple of Doom, but it does have some darker elements to it that reminded me of that kind of that you know, you should be afraid for these characters type of moments within this new narrative. And then the Last Crusade comparisons, to me, Really enjoyed that film. Love the relationship between Indy Sr. and Jr. And in this film, we have Indiana Jones and his relationship with Phoebe's character. And there's a tension there. There's a conflict there. But at the end of the day, they care for each other. They want to support one another. They have love for each other. So there is that banter that I love that we got from Last Crusade, but it also has that heart that I love from Last Crusade. So comparing to those films, The Dollar Destiny is its own narrative, is its own story, but it had some similar traits to those movies that I personally really enjoyed. But again, I really thought that the writers did a good job of it felt like we were in the Indiana Jones world. Again, I don't want to give my rankings away, but let's just say the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it didn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie to me. It felt like I compare it to when you see someone from a far distance and you think you know them and you're like, oh, hey, what's going on? And you're getting closer and closer to them. And when they turn around, you're like, oh, you're not who I thought you were. And that's how I look at the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But this felt like an Indiana Jones film. And I think, again, going back to the direction, but also the writing, those two departments really help capture the essence of those films. But let's talk about the performances, because for me, it's the characters that I really enjoyed about the original, is how charismatic they are, especially Indiana Jones. And starting off with some of the supporting characters, while I thought I wanted more from certain characters, there's no doubt that they felt like they fit within this world, and I thought they really worked. Like, for example, Boyd Holbrook, who worked with James Mangold with Logan, he's a character to me, he's like a henchman of our main villain, Smits, and I think Boyd gave me more than what the script gave him. Like, he is a henchman and he does the henchman stereotypical things, but he gave me a little bit more nuance than what I would imagine what was on the page. And the same goes with Matt Mikkelsen, who I think is one of the best actors working in Hollywood. He plays our main villain, and I will say Indiana Jones, to me, I wouldn't say has a villain issue, but none of the villains to me in the previous films were like standout characters. Like, they have like individual moments, but they weren't like memorable, like groundbreaking villains in my opinion. And I wouldn't say Matt Mikkelsen was a groundbreaking villain, but he is probably, arguably, by default, probably the best villain we've seen in the film. But I wanted more from that character, which I'll talk about later. But I thought, again, we're talking about performances. The performance was great. But then the MVPs, kind of the standouts for me. Number one, I love Sallah. This isn't a spoiler. He's in the trailer. I almost got a little teary-eyed when we see Sallah in the film. It's not like a cameo. He's in the film a good amount of times, and I just really love his character and love what he did in this film and just the relationship between him and Indy. But I want to talk about Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I'm just a fan of outside this film, whether it be her work on Fleabag and her writing and being a part of the creative team of Killing Eve. I think she's just like a creative genius. And as far as an actress go, I think she's great as well. But in this film, man, she is a really interesting, fun, complex adventurer in her own right? You know, going back to some of those original films, yes, I love Marion. I have such a good time with Willie. We have, what's her name, Elsa in The Last Crusade, and of course we had Marion coming back in the fourth one. I like those supporting characters for what they did with those films, but they were never like equally on the same level as Indy as far as like being an adventurer and having their own kind of agency. I really love what the Helena character brought to the franchise. She is an adventurer. She has her relationship with her father that created that kind of narrative, but she also has this conflict with Indy, and you'll see that conflict when you see the film. But I really enjoyed the layers. You didn't know if you can trust her or not at some points in the film. But again, going back to my Last Crusade comparison, you know that she cares for Indy and vice versa. So I really thought she brought this kind of freshness and uniqueness to this franchise, and she's just such a great actress in general. But the MVP, roll out the red carpet, because it is his final time playing this character. Let's talk about Harrison Ford, who to me has been on this, like, he's always been an iconic, like, great actor throughout his career. I love him as Solo and love him in a lot of different other movies that we've seen him in. But I want to start off by, if you guys haven't seen this, a quick little recommendation. There's a show on Apple TV Plus by the name of Shrinking. I think that is one of his best performances of his entire career, and I feel like he's in this zone, he's in this mood. I feel like he's having fun. Not saying that he never had fun in the role, but like I think about when he came back for the Star Wars franchise, like, yeah, there's hints of Solo, but he's not really Solo. I think back to 2011 and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and even revisiting it recently. He's there, he has his Indiana Jones moments, but it doesn't seem like Harrison Ford, the actor, has the same spark. But again, taking it back to Shrinking and then implementing that energy, that enthusiasm, that happiness, that joy, that spark it fits so perfectly with the story that we have here with Indy, because Indy's looking for that spark. He's found it, man. Like Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford's performance is so much nuance because, again, it addresses the old man Indy story. It addresses him coming up with why he wasn't there for certain moments of people's lives. What is it about history that he loves so much? What is it about this particular adventure that makes him want to be a part of it, right? And we see those layers. We see the complexity. We see the nuance of the performance by Harrison Ford. And, man, he really brought his A game. Again, yes, we don't see him kicking and punching and whipping people and getting out of situations as easily as he did when he was younger, but the film addresses why he doesn't come at certain things with that same approach. So I thought Harrison Ford just knocked it out of the park, and I really, really thought that he brought his A game when he brought this character to the big screen for the final time. So talking about how it's so character focused, but there is action to be had in this film, and I enjoyed the action because it does, again, address this isn't young Indy. So what does that look like, as well as having Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character in the mix, having this new kind of short round 2.0 in the mix, and obviously all the other action set pieces that we got here. I thought the action was fluid. Some of it worked better than others, but for the most part, it was very fluid. It felt like Indiana Jones type of action. There's a really cool chase sequence in the middle of the film that I had a fun time with. The actual adventure. I'm a sucker for the puzzles, finding out certain things, the way the film handles exposition and how they give us what is it about this dial, what is it capable of, what are the consequences if it ends up in the wrong hands. So I really enjoyed the MacGuffin and the adventure that we go on, and again, the themes being so strong was just something I really appreciated. But I can go on and on and on about the things I love and really enjoy, but this film is not perfect. I do have some criticisms, one being I will start off by talking about the opening without giving too much away. As you all know, they made a big deal about it that we will spend a good amount, and surprisingly, like 20-25 minutes maybe of the opening is a flashback to the de-age Harrison Ford. And while I enjoy the adventure, how dark, how sinister it kind of was, I will admit the de-aging and the voice of Harrison Ford didn't match up for me. Like, this is obviously a younger Indiana Jones. Maybe 10 to 15 years is where the flashback takes place versus the present time. And it's a younger Indy, but it's the older voice of Harrison Ford. I wish they would have mixed that a little bit better. And also, I wish they would have use deepfake versus de-aging. Like, we've come a long way with the technology, but when there is certain angles and certain light that hits Indy face, you can obviously tell that they're using that technology. When he's in the dark and it's kind of shaded, you don't really tell. It mixes in as the scene plays out, but it was very noticeable, and particularly the voice. So that was something that stood out to me. And there are other flashbacks that happens in this film that felt a bit off. Minor thing, but definitely something that stood out to me. There is a bit of a pacing issue for me in this film, and particularly when we get into the second half of the film, when the film kind of slows down from one of the bigger action set pieces. And it really takes place when we get to a scene where we're on the boat, we're introduced to Antonio Banderas' character, who I thought was a fun character and, again, fit within this world. But that whole scene and just kind of what we were doing and how it slowed down and what we were trying to accomplish just felt like it slowed down in its pacing and momentum of it. And there are some other points in the film where it has these high highs but also low lows. So there's a bit of a pacing issue for me in this movie. But in particularly, going to my biggest issue with the film, the third act. Now, I've always loved the big swings that this franchise takes, whether it be the Raiders of the Lost Ark or the whole demonic heart-taking moments in the Temple of Doom, and of course the Cup of Christ in The Last Crusade, and don't even get me started on the aliens. This third act takes a big swing, and if you have seen enough of my videos, you know how I feel about certain science fiction things that we see in films, and I won't say what it is, but if you see the trailer, you can kind of get a hint at what the dial does, right? So I think I appreciate the swing that it takes. There are some moments in the third act, and particularly when we end the movie, I got very emotional, but in the climax of, like, okay, we always know in the Indiana Jones films, they show us, okay, if someone gets this particular artifact, what does it look like when it's in the wrong hands? They explore that in this film, and I don't think the execution was that great. I think it could have been handled a little bit better, in my opinion, and there's just some moments where I'm like, that feels like weirdly placed. That feels a little awkward in this moment. So I wasn't the biggest fan of the biggest climactic moment in the third act. The emotional beats hit, But when we're in the dirt, when we're in the trenches, I wasn't the biggest fan of the execution. So those are my main pros. Those are my main cons. Wrapping up this video, if you stuck around to the point of this video, I really appreciate you. If you're having a good time, just a friendly reminder, if you all could, hit the thumbs up, consider sharing this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, for me, as a fan of this franchise, I walked out of the Dial of Destiny a pretty satisfied fan. I thought that James Mangold did such a great job of exploring the history of one of the most beloved characters in cinema in such a beautiful way. This film explores why Indy stays in the past, and he's so enamored with history, and why he's somewhat reluctant of his future after losing what he's lost in his film. Now, the movie does have those similar traits to The Temple of Doom meets The Last Crusade, but at the same time, I did feel like some of the action lacked some of the magic and the charm that Steven Spielberg had, but at the end of the day, James Mangold still captures the essence of Indiana Jones. I thought the performance by Phoebe Waller-Bridge was really entertaining, very enjoyable. I was a bit disappointed of Matt Mikkelsen and Boyle Holbrook. They were kind of one-dimensional. They gave me more, but I wish they would have leaned more into the more darker elements of their characters. The second half has a bit of a lull, slows down in its momentum, but at the end of the day, I really enjoyed how I wrapped up and gave Harrison Ford his proper flowers to saying goodbye in such a meaningful way, and I really do hope that people appreciate the sentiments that this film has to offer. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a 3.8 out of 5. Now, again, I'm going to be making my separate rankings, but I'll just say it's not in my top 3, but it surely ain't at the bottom, so you'll have to find out where this film ranks. But overall, I had a good time. I really enjoyed this final chapter for this iconic character. So that's my thoughts. It is your turn to share yours in the comments. Once you've seen it, of course, and obviously I'm putting this out a couple weeks before it releases, let me know your anticipation level. But again, once you've seen it, your pros, your cons, favorite moments, least favorite moments. Did you want a little bit more from the villain? Were you satisfied with them? What did you think about the pacing? What did you think about that ending? And more importantly, were you satisfied after seeing this film? Let's talk about it. Share your rankings. I'm going to be making a video sharing my rankings of the film, but share yours in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this review. Again, just a reminder, if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, comment, and consider subscribing to the channel. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you had a good time. As you can see on the screen now, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out my reviews that I've done so far this year. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next video. Yeah.